Okay, so let's dive in. We're going deep today
Yeah.
into something that's been making a lot of noise. We're talking Bitcoin
Oh, yeah.
and a prediction
Mm-hmm.
that it'll hit $1 million
Wow.
by the end of the year.
$1 million. That's
That's right, a cool million.
ambitious.
Now, to unpack this, we're looking at an article.
Okay.
It's called Implications of Bitcoin Hitting $1 Million in 2025.
Interesting title.
Yeah, and it really gets to the heart of this deep dive. See, the article isn't focused on how Bitcoin will get to that price.
Right.
It's more about what happens if it does.
I see. So like the ripple effects.
Exactly. The shock waves through the financial world,
Hmm.
and for everyday folks like us.
So less about the journey, more about the destination.
Precisely.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
All right, well, first things first, just to put things in perspective. As of today, January 1st, 2025, Bitcoin is nowhere near $1 million.
No, of course not.
I mean, it's significantly lower. So we're talking about a huge jump,
Mm-hmm.
a massive increase.
Right. Like this isn't just, oh, my investment did well.
Right. This is like, whoa, the whole system's changing kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The article jumps right into those potential changes.
Okay. So walk me through some of that.
Well, for starters, they talk about how $1 million Bitcoin could really disrupt traditional finance.
In what way? Like, how would banks react?
Yeah, and governments too. I mean, think about it. If Bitcoin's worth that much, how do you use it for everyday things?
Right, like buying groceries or gas.
Exactly. You'd need these incredibly precise fractions of a Bitcoin.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. It's not like you can just split $1 million Bitcoin into even pieces easily.
So you'd need some new systems.
Oh, absolutely. New financial tools, ways to handle these tiny, tiny units of value.
So this isn't just theoretical, like economists debating in some ivory tower?
Not at all. This could actually change how we use money in our daily lives.
Fascinating. What else does the article say?
Well, they also get into the potential impact on governments. Like, would they see $1 million Bitcoin as a threat?
A threat. How so?
Well, some experts think governments might see it as a challenge to their control over monetary policy. Their ability to manage the economy.
That makes sense. They wouldn't want to lose control of things.
Exactly. And so the article suggests that some governments might try to impose stricter regulations on cryptocurrencies, trying to rein them in, so to speak.
Makes sense. But on the other hand, wouldn't $1 million Bitcoin also make governments take crypto more seriously?
Oh, absolutely. That's the other side of the coin, so to speak. Some experts argue that governments might be more inclined to embrace cryptocurrencies if they become that valuable and widely used.
So are you saying they might even launch their own digital currencies?
It's possible some countries are already experimenting with that.
To compete with Bitcoin?
Maybe, or maybe to complement it. The article doesn't take a firm stance on which way things will go. It just presents both sides of the argument.
Which is fair. I mean, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question to think about. Would $1 million Bitcoin force governments to adapt, or would it lead to more conflict?
Definitely a question worth pondering. Okay, so we've talked about the potential impact on governments and the financial system as a whole, but what about everyday people? What about individual wealth?
That's a huge part of the article as well. They talk about how $1 million Bitcoin could create a new wave of wealth, but it could also exacerbate existing inequalities.
Right, the early adopters, the people who invested in Bitcoin years ago, they could see their holdings skyrocket.
Exactly. We're talking about life-changing wealth for some people. But on the flip side, it could also widen the gap between the haves and the have-nots.
Like if people who didn't invest early would be even further behind.
Precisely. And that's one of the key tensions the article highlights, the potential for amazing wealth creation, but also the potential for greater inequality.
It's a fascinating dilemma. Now, the article doesn't really dive into the specifics of how we would use $1 million Bitcoin in our everyday lives. Like, would we be buying groceries with Bitcoin?
Right. They touch on that briefly, but they don't go into too much detail.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a question worth considering. If Bitcoin's value stabilizes at $1 million, would we see more businesses accepting it for everyday transactions?
That would be a huge shift.
It would. Imagine a world where you could use Bitcoin to pay for your coffee, your groceries, your rent. It would change everything about how we think about money and finance.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around it.
I know, it's a mind-blowing concept. But that's what makes this prediction so fascinating, even if it doesn't come true. It forces us to confront these big questions about the future of money.
Absolutely. So just to recap, This article lays out a pretty wild vision of a world transformed by $1 million Bitcoin. And it doesn't shy away from the complexities. It explores the potential benefits and the potential risks.
And ultimately, that's what I appreciate about this article. It doesn't try to give us all the answers. It just lays out the possibilities and challenges us to think critically about the future.
Exactly. It's not about being right or wrong about the prediction. It's about being prepared for whatever comes next.
Well said. Because this isn't just about Bitcoin. It's about the future of finance, technology, and really society as a whole.
Big stuff.
Yeah.
So, listeners, what do you think? Are we on the verge of a financial revolution? Let us know your thoughts. This conversation is far from over. Until next time, keep diving.